Ever get the feeling life's kind of like one big obstacle course?
Uh-huh. Yeah, I think we all know that feeling.
And sometimes those obstacles can really feel like they come out of nowhere.
Definitely.
So today we're diving deep into this ancient technique, and it's all about tackling those challenges head on before they even, well, become challenges.
It's intriguing.
Yeah, it's called Premeditatio Malorum, which, well, I'll be honest, it translates to premeditation of evils.
Oh, wow. Okay, so maybe not the cheeriest name.
Right. But stick with us because it's not about being all doom and gloom. It's actually more about kind of like mental strength training.
I see. So sort of like preparing yourself for those curveballs life throws.
Exactly. So that when they do come, you're not completely thrown off guard.
Makes sense.
And what's really interesting is we found examples of this, not just from like ancient philosophers, but even in modern psychology and business practices.
Oh, wow. So it's kind of like a timeless strategy?
Yeah, that's what we're going to unpack in this deep dive. We'll see how it can make you more resilient and, believe it or not, even help you appreciate the good things more.
I'm all ears.
So, premeditatio malorum, what's the deal with this kind of intense-sounding practice?
Well, as you mentioned, it literally means premeditation of evils. But the core idea is less about dwelling on negativity and much more about, like, strategic preparation for setbacks.
Okay, yeah, so not just like, sitting around and thinking about all the bad things that could happen.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
It's really about building that mental resilience so when those inevitable challenges do arise, they don't hit you with the same force. And interestingly, the Stoics weren't the first ones onto this idea.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you can trace some of these concepts even further back in ancient Greek thought.
Huh. That's fascinating. But
Uh,
the Stoics definitely seem to embrace it in a big way.
Absolutely. And when you look at their lives, it makes sense.
Yeah, like Seneca. Didn't he say something about unexpected events hitting us the hardest?
He did.
And he was like all about mentally rehearsing these tough situations, things like exile, even torture.
Yeah, he really went there. Loss of loved ones, even death itself. He wanted to confront these possibilities head on in his mind.
It's wild to think about. I mean, wouldn't that just make you more anxious?
It seems counterintuitive, right?
Yeah.
But the idea is that by mentally simulating these negative outcomes, you're actually creating a sort of cognitive buffer. It's like your brain has already processed the possibility, so when or if it happens in reality, the shock is lessened. And Seneca himself, he actually faced exile later in life.
Right, right. I bet that mental preparation came in handy.
It's very likely. And other Stoics, like Epictetus, who lived as a slave, he also advised keeping things like death and exile in mind. For him, it was about fostering a sense of detachment, not being so tightly gripped by the fear of these things.
That's a powerful idea. And then you have Marcus Aurelius, an emperor constantly dealing with conflict and tough decisions.
Yeah, he was all about anticipating difficult interactions, even trying to understand the motivations of people who might oppose him.
It's like they were using this technique to steel themselves for the inevitable challenges of their lives.
Exactly. And what's truly remarkable is how this ancient wisdom still resonates today. You can see it in so many modern practices.
Oh, for sure. Like in the business world, you have the concept of a pre-mortem. Have you ever heard of that?
Yeah.
It's basically where a team imagines their project has failed and then tries to figure out all the reasons why. It's pure premeditatio malorum.
It really is. And then you have things like risk management and scenario planning.
Right, like always thinking about, okay, what's the absolute worst thing that could happen here?
And how can we prepare for it?
How do we mitigate the damage? That kind of thing.
Exactly. It's about being proactive, not just reactive.
And even in personal development, there are techniques that draw on the same principle.
Yeah, Tim Ferriss has his fear-setting exercise. It's a very direct application of Premeditatio Malorum.
I've heard of that. It's about defining your fears, right?
Yes, and visualizing those worst-case scenarios. And what's interesting is that by doing that, by facing those fears head-on, people often find that they actually become less afraid and more likely to take action.
So in a way, it's like you're taking away the power of those fears by confronting them directly.
Exactly. And there's another really cool side effect of all this mental preparation.
What's that?
Well, it actually tends to increase your gratitude for what you have right now.
Okay, how so?
Well, by really imagining the absence of things you value, by contemplating the possibility of losing them, it makes you appreciate them so much more in the present moment.
I see. It's like a shift in perspective.
Yeah, you're not taking those good things for granted anymore.
This is all really interesting, but I think it's super important to make a clear distinction here.
Yeah, I agree.
This is not about being a pessimist.
No, not at all.
Pessimism is just, constantly focusing on the negative, always seeing the glass half empty.
Yeah. Right. It's a passive mindset, a kind of resignation to negativity.
Exactly. But premeditatio malorum is different. It's an active, intentional practice. It's a tool, a mental exercise. It's about being proactive, not reactive.
And the Stoics, even though they were all about preparing for hardship, they actually aimed for what they called self-confident optimism.
Oh, that's an interesting concept.
Yeah, it's this idea that you can prepare for the downside, for the challenges, but you can also be confident in your ability to respond effectively. You're not just resigning yourself to negativity.
I see. It's like a balanced approach, acknowledging the potential for negative outcomes, but also believing in your ability to navigate them.
Exactly. And the end goal is actually quite positive.
Yeah, you mentioned increased gratitude and less fear.
Exactly. It's about cultivating a mindset that allows you to face challenges with courage and to appreciate the good things in your life with even greater depth.
So we see this ancient wisdom in action today, not just in personal development, but in other fields too, right?
Oh, absolutely. Risk analysts, for example, they use worst-case scenarios all the time. It's a strategic advantage.
Yeah, it helps them anticipate potential problems and come up with solutions before those problems even arise.
Exactly. And in psychology, there's a technique called imaginal exposure that's used to help people process their anxieties. It involves mentally confronting feared situations, kind of like what we've been talking about.
So there's real scientific backing for this idea that mentally preparing for negative events can actually be beneficial.
There is. And studies have shown that it can lead to increased gratitude, improved emotional regulation, all sorts of positive outcomes. But of course, it's important to do it in a healthy way.
Right, like you don't want to get stuck just dwelling on negative thoughts.
Exactly. It's about using this technique as a tool for growth and resilience, not letting it turn into a source of constant worry or anxiety.
That makes sense. We've talked about the theory, but do you have any real-world examples of how this actually plays out in people's lives?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, think about Seneca again. He faced exile with remarkable composure, likely drawing on his years of mental preparation.
That's true.
And then you have someone like Booker T. Washington. When he was setting out to open his school, the Tuskegee Institute, he faced incredible challenges, but he was very deliberate about thinking through those challenges, anticipating the obstacles he'd encounter. And that mental preparation played a huge role in his success.
Wow, that's inspiring. So if someone's listening to this and thinking, okay, this all sounds really interesting, I want to try it, where do I even begin? What would you say?
Well, I'd say start small. Don't try to tackle your biggest fears right out of the gate. Begin by thinking about everyday situations where things could go wrong. Like imagine your commute gets disrupted or you have a disagreement with a coworker. Just little things to start.
Okay, so just sort of ease into it.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And as you get more comfortable with the practice, you can gradually start to expand it to bigger goals and challenges.
that makes sense. What else is important to keep in mind?
Well, the key is to not just imagine the negative event happening, but to also mentally rehearse how you would respond in a calm and constructive way.
Oh, that's a good point. So it's not just about visualizing the bad thing, it's also about visualizing your own resilience.
Exactly. It's about training your mind to stay grounded and resourceful, even in the face of adversity.
I like that. Any other tips?
Well, one more thing that I find really powerful is to regularly take some time to think about the things you value most in your life, and then to imagine them being gone.
Oh, wow. Okay. That does sound intense.
It is. But it's also a very effective way to cultivate deep gratitude for what you have right now. Because when you really contemplate the possibility of losing something precious, it makes you appreciate it so much more while you have it.
It's like that saying, you don't know what you've got till it's gone.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But with Premeditatio Malorum, you're sort of proactively tapping into that wisdom, reminding yourself of the value of the good things in your life before they're potentially taken away.
That's really powerful. So as we wrap up here, I think the main takeaway is that this isn't about dwelling on negativity. It's about preparing wisely, building resilience, and deepening your appreciation for the present moment.
Absolutely. It's about taking control of your mindset and using it as a tool to navigate life's inevitable challenges with grace and gratitude.
And on that note, I'll leave you with a final thought to ponder. How might intentionally considering potential difficulties in a controlled and constructive way actually sharpen your focus and deepen your appreciation for this very moment, for the good things in your life right now? It's a powerful question to consider.
It really is. Thanks for having me on to explore this fascinating topic.
Likewise, this has been a truly insightful deep dive.
I agree.
Until next time.
Take care.